Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and across from me is the doctor himself. You could just say, hey.
No.
"Was up" was a thing you were doing for a while.
No. Cue me up again.
And across from me is the doctor himself.
It wasn't me. Saw me banging on the counter.
It wasn't me.
Oh, no.
I saw you banging on the island.
It's... obviously, it's all awful.
Yeah.
But there's the one little step extra of awful of just like, can no one just be not a goddamn monster?
Why is it when everyone gets any sort of level of fame, they immediately become the worst?
It's crazy.
Literally, you would think at least like Stephen Hawking.
You'd think there'd be some kind of like statistical level where at least like some people will make it to the end of their lives not having been awful. And it's like, no, I guess
no,
it's
everybody's
everyone.
bad. Yeah, given the opportunity, everyone will become bad.
Truly, truly dismaying.
Yeah, one way or another, you're headed for darkness.
It's awful, man.
Yeah, I don't love that.
No, it's brutal. Is this good for comedy?
Each week, we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you.
Hey, zip, zip, zip. Boing, boing.
Boing. Honk, honk.
Drive time radio, guys. First day at NPR.
Yeah. And now we're going to listen to the late African artist stylings of Memembe.
Go on, keep going.
Something else.
Come up with his last name.
Nope.
Yeah, Memembe. Go on. Land this plane.
Smith.
I did not. By the way, I didn't ask you to leap into the pit.
Memembe Smith. Oh, me so horny.
That's fun.
On that note,
that's the level of sensitivity we'll be bringing to today's
refugees.
Topic. Listen, this was the topic you picked.
Yeah, that's right.
You wanted us to talk about like refugees,
displaced people,
stuff like that in comic books. Did that come from anywhere? Like, is there a thing you were reading that made you think of it, or is like where did this come from? How did you get to this and not just be like, I don't know, Dr. Fate? Like,
because I think that I've always been fascinated by this concept of like the Atlantean people.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I think that there's always this thing that like in comic books, especially when they dive a little bit deeper, which is just like, okay, this like crazy destructive thing happened. Now where do they go?
Right.
And I always think that whenever they address it, it's cool. And whenever like something happens, I think about it. And so I think for me, that's always like a big question mark, which is just like, okay, like what happens then?
Right.
And so for me, it's super interesting. And I always just love that idea where it's like, there's so much like planet destructions and islands, like sinking into the water and like earthquakes and all this like natural disasters, plus just fucking superheroes fighting. It's like, there's gotta be a toll for these actions. And
yeah, you would think. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's where it came from.
Interesting.
Because I'm fucking layered.
I mean, apparently.
Inside me, there are two wolves.
Yeah. One listens to NPR.
Yeah, and the other one, boing, me so whiny. Yeah, it's that.
Yeah.
But this is the other thing.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm going to bring a little bit of the other.
Well, tastefully.
Yeah, well, of course.
We'll see.
I know what tastes good.
No.
Poontang.
I can't. Be upset about every single person that showed up on that.
Yeah, no,
list.
it's awful. It's all
Be
bad.
upset about all of it.
Yeah.
For some reason, the Stephen Hawking one just made me really mad.
Yeah. Because you know that it has to be more than one person implicit.
This is a bad way to think about this, but there's also like it kind of just feels like, but like, why?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm going to say something awful. I don't mean it awfully. But like, these people electing to do these bad things, a lot of them were like in political or finance or business spheres. You could see a shared group of interests. The fuck does Stephen Hawking give a shit about that? He just wanted to do his math. Like, why is he, you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't running for prime minister. He wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like, Why be like this? I'm so pissed about it.
I mean, I guess there is a thing.
I'm pissed about all of it, but that one just really stood out, and I'm not sure 100% why, but I think that's part of it.
Without trying to like give him an out, I think that there's something to be said about when it's like when all you have is your brain. I think that like it's like when you have nothing to live for except for math, it's like you start probably going down some dark holes about the other ways to make yourself happy.
And I think that would be a probably more likely scenario if there weren't a bunch of non-Stephen Hawkings on those flight logs.
Sure, yeah. No. It's not
if you looked at the flight
anyone.
logs and everyone was
Yeah.
like quadriplegic, you'd be like, that's a weird correlation.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You know,
I guess Epstein thought he was doing a good deed. Yeah.
I hate everything that's happening about it. I hate that how like magnetically drawn to commenting on it. I feel like we are. It's awful. It's bad.
It's doing. It's like you were playing fucking Mad Libs with like Epstein's Island, and it's hard to not.
It's crazy.
Anyway,
so bad.
Speaking of
not that
displaced people.
Oh, no. No. I was about to say let's land this plane. But that's also not what I want to say. Let's get away from planes and flight logs.
Really on an island here. All right.
We got a bunch of questions.
We got a question. Let's do it.
Hey.
Let's get to the first question.
All right.
From Facebook.
Going to the face of the book. Going to the Facebook.
First question comes from Braden Ketty, who asks, has there ever been a people who were unable to adapt to their new environment when leaving their home behind? I mean, I'm thinking about a specific person who had to go to the Phantom Zone because he couldn't handle the fucking lead.
Well, Monel's a good example. Yeah. No. What just happened?
I blacked out. What happened?
That's about the sexiest thing I've ever seen you do. That was amazing. Yeah, no, you're right. Monel's a great example of that, right? He's Daxamite, so he has a weakness to lead.
Yeah.
And when he first showed up on Earth, it was like when he first showed up on Earth, it was like the 60s. Lead was in everything.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Whoa, I don't feel so good." And they had to put him in the Phantom Zone until they could cure his lead poisoning.
That's right.
So that's a great example of one. I'm trying to think of one where it's like a group.
Yeah, because the Atlanteans have like somehow transformed when you're talking about like when San Francisco like sunk and
San Diego. So if we're talking about just displaced people,
Subdiegans were able to adapt pretty instantly, basically.
Well, yeah. So, some, right? Because there was a whole experiment in the water supply, and some people, when San Diego sank, it became Subdiego.
Yeah.
Some people survived, but a bunch did not.
Oh, okay.
And then others, like they did survive, and then we read it. They try to come back onto the beach.
Sure,
to see they can't because they can't breathe air anymore.
Yeah.
So, like that's a good example of them having. It's sort of the opposite of this question. It wasn't that they couldn't adapt to their new thing; it's that they couldn't go back.
Sure, yeah.
It actually like forced them to be it forced them to be displaced or to be basically like refugees. They couldn't go home because they could not breathe. Now, eventually, that wore off, right?
Sure.
And some of them drowned, and some of them got back to land and stuff like that. But so I guess like long term, technically they couldn't stay underwater. But the Subdiegans are a really good example of that. Look at you. Out the gate with Mon-El and Subdiego.
All right.
It's a new year, baby.
I hate this.
Oh my god. Is this really happening?
Yeah, it only took 8 years.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah. Amazing. Those are two probably of the best examples. Let's see. They're the two most readily available examples I could think of, of people not being able to adapt. Now, there's different kinds of not being able to adapt, right? I feel like this question is like physically they couldn't handle it, in which case those two examples are great. But there's lots of examples of like, I guess we'll move here. And then people are like, we hate you. And they're like, oh, I guess we won't. No, like that happens all the fucking time. I mean, fucking especially with Atlanteans. I mean, Atlanteans are xenophobic on their own. But the rare time that they've, Aquaman or Mira or someone has managed to get them to extend a hand to the surface world fucking hates them. Like, Atlanteans are pretty maligned that way.
We just talked about it like last week, when oh god, what was it? Where the people from the one planet ended up having to go to the other one.
Well, the Thanagarians.
Yeah, Thanagarians. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously lots of political tension and strife and stuff like that there. But again, that's an example of that kind of not fitting.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. But yes, 100%. There's lots of those. There's fewer of the, like, I'm not sure we could actually make this work.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that... Yeah, there's not a ton of I think that there's a lot. Like, has there ever been a moment where like a bunch of aliens have to like suddenly like live on Earth and the Earth has to adapt to that?
Yeah. I mean, it's happening right now in Blue Beetle. There's a sort of like subgroup of the Reach. So the Reach are the aliens that make the Scarabs.
Sure. Yes.
Like the Green Lanterns fucking hate them.
Yeah.
Like they're conquerors. They're bad. But this group, the Horizon, are a group of like Reach aliens that don't subscribe to the Reach's approach or politics or things like that. Currently, they're living in Palmyra City. A group of them are living in Palmyra City, and Blue Beetle and Starfire and that are trying to like help them integrate. And people fucking hate them, you know, or some people at least. But it's that sort of thing where it's like, you think the story is going to be like, see, they're not so different from us. But he actually has to turn around and be like, we're actually a lot different than this.
Sure.
Like, they don't have to justify shit. They, you know what I mean? Like, they're the refugees. They need a home.
Yeah.
They weren't welcome in their own home, or they had to flee or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
It's not their job to justify needing a place. It's our job to justify why it should be here.
Yes.
Or why the Reach wasn't just right about their thing. You know what I mean? Like the entire philosophy of the Horizon about being better than the Reach is kind of on the line when they get here and they're like, maybe the Reach had it right.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, maybe we should just conquer. Like, if this is what we're going to face. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I like how that Blue Beetle book is tackling stuff.
That's a cool way to choose that. Yeah, I like that.
And it's great for it to be Jaime and stuff like there's a lot of things that I like about that Blue Beetle book right now.
Totally.
So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
All right, let's leave Facebook and head it over to Instagram.
Now we're going to Instagram, take some questions and answer them.
First question comes from Mara in Iowa, who asks, so do you consider Superman and Supergirl refugees or... I mean, yeah. Absolutely.
They kind of have to be, right?
Yeah,
like their planet was exploding.
Yeah. And they were sent somewhere to be like saved.
To save them because their home was no longer hospitable. That wasn't going to... Yeah, they got sent away
like
for
the direct determination, I think, of... Yeah,
and, DC is also, loves to be very flag wavy about Superman's a refugee, blah, 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 blah. Like when World Refugee Day comes around, they go like, Superman's a refugee. And then you kind of go like, how much are you talking about this in the comics? And they go like, sporadically.
Yeah.
Like, or, whatever. But yes, definitively, I would say Superman and Supergirl are refugees. Now, there are... we made this theme like refugees, displaced people, like it's pretty wide open. I'm sure there are some like very meticulous definitions of refugee.
Sure.
Like meaning fleeing something very particular or a couple of things very particular. I'm going to use it more broadly. But in that sense, there's lots of refugees on Earth in DC.
Yeah.
Martian Manhunter came by accident, with Dr. Erdell's communication beam, but it saved him from Hronmir's curse, the plague of psychic fire that wiped out the rest of the Martians. So Martian Manhunter's a refugee in that sense. Most alien characters you encounter on Earth are some form of like, and I made this my home because I came from a war-torn world, or there's that story is extremely common in DC, especially with like on an individual level, individual alien superheroes. There's a lot that qualify as this sort of like a refugee kind of one. Superman and Supergirl are the most obvious, I guess, because pop culture and stuff like that. Everyone knows Krypton exploded. Everyone knows who Superman is. Everyone knows whatever. But yeah, I mean it's absolutely a refugee story.
Totally. All right, let's go to the next question. Comes to us from Delgado Andrew.
All right.
Who asks softball question. How would the League handle people in the middle of a mass displacement on Earth?
Well, I mean, it's definitely happened, like story to story. There's always these kind of things where every once in a while the story will zoom out or zoom in on like the civilians affected by a thing.
Sure.
I'll come out and say it. I actually think the League historically is not very good at it.
Really? What are the cases for that?
The League's pretty good at dealing with the threat of a thing and not historically great at dealing with the fallout of it. Partly because sometimes, even when the League isn't Justice League of America, there is this kind of like, how much should we be fucking with international politics? Like that question does come up a lot in the League, and they don't all see eye to eye on that, on where they should be proactive and where they shouldn't. That's part of it. Part of it is, I think, the idea of like sometimes there are tensions with the metas or the super folk of other countries, or they're told to stay out of I'm thinking of like how they have to deal with Black Adam or things like that. I think also it's that the framework of comics, we're not often focusing on the refugees. You know what I mean? We may see them in a couple of pages, or it might come up as a story point, and then later they'd be like, and what did we do? Is go, oh, we found them a place to live. And you kind of just like blow past it, and you go like, well, what does that mean? And not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but like we found them a new place to live. You go like, where and whose place was it?
Yeah.
And you kind of go like, ugh. Like I'd make the argument that that's not actually what the Justice League is good at. They have resources and they have connections, and I think they could be good assists, but I don't think they don't have the know-how to be frontline, like resettling people, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I think they're better support work than anything for that. Use our teleporter. Atlantis is donating a bunch of ships to take people somewhere, or, the Flash will build a bunch of houses real quick, or like they're good as support workers. I wouldn't want the Justice League like deciding what to do with people displaced from their homeland. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no, that's fair.
They're not a government. They're not like, you know what I mean? Like
they punch people for a living.
I kind of just want them to be like, you're on standby for when we need some of your powers to make this go more easily. But like, I don't want them in the decision-making process, with the exception of stopping like the evil tyrant, or ending the war, or something. And then, you kind of want someone better qualified to come in and try to actually pick up the pieces, Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, let's leave Instagram and head on over to Reddit,
where everyone's nice and no one's ever mean.
First question comes from Rick to the E, who asks, you talked about him in your first episode, I think, but what's going on with Ambush Bug now? Any updates? Wow, it has been a long time.
That's true. Technically, though, Ambush Bug, like Erwin Schwab, is not a refugee. His clothes are.
Is that really?
Yeah. Brummel on the planet Schwab realizes the planet's going to explode and puts his favorite clothes in a spaceship and sends them away so that they'll survive. And then en route, the spaceship gets attacked by a radioactive spider and kind of abuse some weird powers, and they land on Earth, and Erwin Schwab puts on the suit and he becomes the Ambush Bug. So technically the clothes are the refugee in that situation.
Wow.
Most recently, Ambush Bug has shown up in the Fire and Ice miniseries that's out right now. The Fire and Ice Welcome to Smallville.
Oh yeah,
Ambush Bug's in that. It's a very fun, kind of lighthearted.
I love that
series that's been fun to watch. But he's shown up in there. He pops up every once in a while. He was around a surprising amount, I would say, during like Infinite Crisis, lead up to Final Crisis. Even like up to Flashpoint, I feel like he knew that, like, because one of his things is he has that cosmic awareness. He knows he's in a comic book.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he knew Flashpoint was happening, like a month or two before like the event was going to happen. Like, I think there's an Ambush Bug thing where he alludes to Flashpoint.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think Tracy asked that question.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
I think that was the first.
I think episode 2. Is when we talk about
was it?
Ambush
Okay,
Bug.
wow.
So it's pretty far back. It might have been the first episode we actually took questions for.
And we don't even talk about Batman until like 3.
Oh yeah, if you can believe it. But yeah, I think that's what's up with him right now.
All right, next question comes from Draco Folly, who asks, is it better when Superman is truly the only Kryptonian left, or do characters like Supergirl, Zod, and Krypto enrich the mythos?
I understand the impulse behind that question. What's your thought on it? First of all, how do you prefer, like, Superman to be one of, if not the only Kryptonian, or what's your take?
I always thought, to be honest, the Supergirl thing was a bit of like a cop out. Like, oh, but there was another one that was actually sent before that didn't get stuck in this Phantom Zone, and
right.
it just feels like a bit too convenient.
Sure.
It feels like a Poochie situation.
Okay. Right.
So no, I didn't always love like, and it's nothing against that character,
but just the setup.
The setup is a bit cheap to me. The Zod thing is slightly more understandable, but I do prefer he's the only Kryptonian.
Right. You don't want to see all of them like Ursa, Feora, Jack Sewer, like.
I like the idea more that it's like this guy who we just have to believe he's from this place because there's no other way to understand why he has these abilities. He's a more amazing, and you can't ever make another one. And I think like that part's so fun.
So you don't even really like John?
Yeah. Like I don't mind it because it's like there's like a passing of the torch kind of thing, and I like that concept of it.
Right.
But like I like and we're so far beyond. Like I get why John exists, and he's a great character, and it's nothing against him. But more about the idea that it's like I like the idea that all of these traits can only come from one person, and you can't replace him.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right.
It's like all of these things can only be attributed, and it's. And if he didn't exist, like we can't even imagine a person so like of so much virtue and all these other things, right? Like he represents so much of these things that like what the intention behind all of our best attributes, like when we describe what America is and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like he's supposed to represent the best of us,
right?
But it can only exist in one person and the only way that one person could even exist is that they're from a planet that exploded. Maybe they were all like that, but we'll never know.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it makes him more special.
I agree in principle.
Yeah.
But I think the reason that we didn't stick with the Byrne thing after Crisis, where he actually was the only Kryptonian.
Yeah.
Because that's when you get like Matrix, Supergirl, and Power Girl has Atlantean origins. Like they were like, no one else could be Kryptonian. I think the reason we undid that is because it does add something to him to have a few more Kryptonians.
Sure.
Now, I agree with the principle that like I don't want every Superman villain to just be another Kryptonian. Like I think that's an easy crutch or something like that. But I like the idea of like Zod was a person that held a place in Kryptonian society. He, even better than Kara, has a memory of the culture and the structure of Krypton. It's a thing he's had a really hard time letting go of. You know what I mean? And that's an interesting counterpoint to Cal, who has only read about it or heard about it from a crystal or something like that. Kara has a slightly different one. She was a kid. She wasn't of age yet. So she has some memories of Krypton, but they're also skewed. She doesn't remember all of the failings of Krypton necessarily. I mean, she does. If you read like Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, like there's a whole issue about
Sure,
like
yeah,
you know. But I do think there's some like different levels there that are fun or interesting. Power Girl has the extra layer of coming from a different universe. Do I want there to be 25 Kryptonians? No.
Yeah.
Am I fine with there being like 8? Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. You know,
I think that the value of
not counting like kids or clones or you know what I mean.
I think the value of Zod for me, and the only reason why he's really on the edge for me, is that it then changes it from the question mark of like we're all Kryptonians like this, and more about the juxtaposition of
right.
It's Clark. It's the miracle that he landed where he landed and got raised the way he raised, and the nature versus nurture thing. Now it puts it also sort of makes the Kents more important. Like it does make Clark more important, I think, than being like, oh, like they weren't like he's just special,
right? Yeah.
And
they were as flawed as anyone.
Yeah, and it's really and it makes him more important through that way, and I think that way it's nice. But once you start being like, well, then Supergirl, it's like, and it's just like it becomes a bit much. Again, great character, great stories.
Yeah,
nothing. And as like a family of superheroes, and I love John Kent, like with the like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like there's good stuff that comes from it. It's not like I'm saying, but if I had my choice,
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. All right, next question. Comes from Armpit the Hero.
How dare you?
What happened to the Malthusians that were living on Earth?
So, Malthusians.
Yeah.
That's the race from which the Guardians of the Universe are descended.
Sure, okay.
And they changed a bunch over time, but the Guardians, the Controllers, those are all Malthusians. They're possibly the first intelligent life forms in the universe.
Wow.
They come from the planet Malthus.
I always prefer a milkshake over a Malthus.
Yeah. I love Maltusers. There are a couple of Guardians that have spent time on Earth. Ganthet has spent time on Earth before. What's his name? Ali Apsa Apsa.
Ali Oxenfree.
Well, that's why I'm getting Appa Ali Apsa spent time on Earth. So there's a couple of them. There's a bigger piece, though. I don't know if it's still canon or not. There was a thing, though, where like leprechauns are
what?
Like distant descendants of Malthusians. So the idea is that like the Malthusians like fractured as a species. Some became the Zamorans, some became the Controllers, some became the Guardians. They all even physically are different. You know, we know what the Guardians look like, but the Zamorans are all like tall and like female, and the Controllers have more dark features and stuff like that. All of these kind of things, and that at one point some Malthusians went out seeking other life or whatever, and they settled on Earth, and over time they forgot that they were from Malthus. They just thought it always lived there, and they just kind of culturally forgot their ancestry, and they are leprechauns, and that their powers are just kind of latent powers that the Malthusians have. And at one point the Guardians, like Ganthet or someone, is like, you could be Guardians if you want, and they go like, oh, I don't know, and then like a bunch of them choose not to. One or two of them I think choose to, but leprechauns are technically a group of Malthusians who settled on Earth, and never,
so they're
and
way
never
more
left.
powerful than we give them credit for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's really funny.
Yeah, so that's the biggest group of Malthusians that live on Earth that I can think of.
That's crazy.
Isn't that kind of dumb? I don't know. I can't even remember when that's from. I'm gonna throw it out like 80s, 90s, but truly, I don't remember.
That's so.
I just know that I've seen it. I know that I've seen it somewhere, but yeah,
that's so dumb.
yeah. Especially considering that there is also like, I mean, maybe not particularly at the time, but there is like, as you know, in DC, all folklores are true more or less. There are like Irish fae folk. Like, we saw them in that Liam Sharp book, the Batman, Wonder Woman, Brave and the Bold. I mean, that comes out way later than this thing we're talking about, but still, like, it's funny that it's like there might also be actual leprechauns, theoretically, by that logic, or they could all be from Maltus, or maybe their being there made the Irish faith. Like, you could retcon whatever you want really out of that. I think it's pretty wide open, but yeah, it's just kind of like a weird. That's a weird thing to be like, this will be our ancient aliens thing.
That's so wild. What a funny way to go.
We also have the Hawks and stuff.
Sure,
like, there's some
ancient
aliens shit going on there too. Or even like the Q Foundation and Aztec. But it is funny to be like, and our other ancient aliens things? Leprechauns.
I do kind of love that.
It's sort of silly.
All right. Next question comes from Luzar.
All right.
Kind of like a Kryptonian name. Who asks, is Power Girl still the Kara Zor-El from Earth 2, or has that changed recently? If you had to make Supergirl and Power Girl originate from the same Earth, how would you do it?
I wouldn't if I had to, because they did it before.
That's the most Reed answer possible, which is that, like, you have to do this. I won't.
I won't. Make me.
All right, that's a good reason.
What I was going to say is they've done it before, and I didn't like it.
Fair, yeah.
And this was post-crisis, this thing that we were talking about. There was a sort of idea to reset Superman to make him the only Kryptonian.
Yeah.
And so they made
Does that mean Supergirl's stacked?
Matrix Supergirl was like a kind of weird like clone experiment kind of thing.
Yeah.
Power Girl, they retconned her to have like ancient Atlantean ties.
Okay.
Like tied to like Aryan, like the sorcerer of Atlantis.
Sure.
That guy and stuff. And they sort of changed her to be that, but it never really felt right because that was never really her power set. Like something about it just never felt right.
I return to my question.
What do you mean?
Does this mean that if they're the same person but from different universes, does this mean that Supergirl's stacked?
I guess as she grows up.
Nice.
Easy.
I'm listening.
Easy. No, they've really toned down Power Girl.
Oh, sure.
So in Infinite Crisis they eventually sorted out. She goes like, I couldn't figure out, and they go, it's because there's supposed to be a multiverse, and when they remake the multiverse, it sort of opens the door to them being like, you're from Earth 2 again.
Sure.
There, that fits. Power Girl is still an older from a parallel Earth version of Kara. She has evolved a little bit since the Lazarus Planet event.
And oh, how she evolved.
Because now she has some like mild like psionic abilities.
Okay.
She can like enter people's minds and then like basically like
she's a mind freak?
Instead of using like telepathy particularly, it's that she can enter people's minds and then use Superman powers like in their mind, like punch down the wall behind, like that your memories are stuck behind.
That's funny. Like
she can kind of do that sort of thing, which I actually really like. I'm enjoying her book, and Omen has become a good side character to her. Omen from the Teen Titans. So I'm enjoying that. But yes, currently she is from Earth 2. The only time that she wasn't was that sort of the early New Earth era from 1985 to basically Infinite Crisis, when she was quote unquote Atlantean ?
So weird.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
Yeah, I didn't love it. At a certain point, you just go like, but why are you keeping Power Girl then? Like, just make a new character, and if you want Power Girl, then just come to terms with the fact that there's more than one Kryptonian. I just didn't understand all the hand wringing about it. It just seemed so just
unnecessary.
Make her Kryptonian. It's fucking fine. Yeah. You know, there was another space. Like it could be anything. She could be that. Like she could just be the Kara, and then Matrix Supergirl is a clone, or she could be Kara's mom. She could be Allura Zor-El, but she's changed her name, or like you could do fucking anything with it. They were like something random.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, let's leave Reddit and head on over to the doc score.
Oh, fuck.
Can't do Christmas music. Come on.
I wasn't going to. Easy.
Let him cook.
Let me cook. Dog scored. I'm trying to do the Seinfeld theme.
Oh, a thing with no lyrics?
I don't know, man.
The whole thing is to change lyrics, and what you did was instead change the music?
Listen.
No, scored.
Dr. Duck scored.
No, it's not.
Dr. Duck scored.
Did I show you that thing that when Jack Black plays Beethoven?
Oh, yeah. Like, wait, which thing?
Where
not
it's
not
the-
Classico from
No.
Tenacious D.
It's so he plays. So Dan Harmon had a short-lived History Channel.
Oh, okay.
Like basically like a bumper show where it was like
Oh, weird.
15 minutes.
Okay.
And it was him and Spencer, and they were basically like had created the ability to like take people from the past and bring them to the future.
And Jack Black plays Beethoven.
And so Jack Black plays Beethoven, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen on TV. But the big thing, he's like, "Don't you remember? Of course, I had lyrics to that song." And then he plays it like they go to like a bar, and he's playing it, and he's like, "Peep in a poo, poop in the pee, peep in the poo, and the poo in the pee."
Because I also love Classico.
Oh,
Can't you see? He's the man. Let me hear you applaud. He is
Yes.
more than a man. He's a shiny golden god.
That
If
is-
you think it's time to fucking rock and fucking roll.
that is very good.
I love that too.
But
But I didn't do any of that.
no,
What I did was
wrong,
there.
incorrect.
Yeah.
You're not gonna fix it.
No, I think we're all just gonna sit in it now.
I only just hit
Nope.
in it. Come on, Hawking, slam Stephen Hawking. Finally.
Oh no. Oh no.
He's doing some Stephen Hawking.
Easy. Easy.
Let's go to the first question. Let me cook.
I'd rather not.
From JK, who asks, from my experience, within the main DC universe, the refugee is often used as an allegory, often with literal aliens like Superman, Dreamer, the Reach, in current Blue Beetle, etc. Are there instances of human refugees in the main DC universe, and do you think their experience is presented well? Speaking as your white privileged natural citizen selves, of course.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is,
Does Adam Strange count?
not really, because he keeps going back and forth. He's more like a commuter.
Sure. Yeah.
What I would say is, on an individual level, like arc to arc,
Yeah.
or sometimes even issue to issue, you can find a wide selection of comic books that have dealt with human refugees, refugee crises, individual refugees, different personal stories, things like that. They happen across books. I guarantee there's a Green Arrow one. There's definitely a Batman one. Like, the Superman ones, they're out there. You can find them. They exist. I would say largely they get, unless your creative team's specific purpose in that arc is like, we're going to strip away the super stuff and we're going to do a real personal story. They do it and you go, wow, that was amazing. That was great. And they go, great. Next week, the Penguin's on the loose again. And you kind of just move on. You know what I mean? Like, the closest you get in terms of big arcs or something dealing with the displacement of people or something is actually something more like No Man's Land. Which
I was just going to say, yeah.
it's a little too, like, you're almost kind of like reveling in the destruction a little bit, but like that kind of thing, like Cataclysm and No Man's Land and that, like, they deal with the, like, how do we get aid in and that. But of course, it's still in America. It's still Gotham. They're still, like, quote, natural citizens until No Man's Land when they cut them off or whatever. They always do that kind of bullshit. But, like, there's Gene Luen Yang does a Superman arc in the New 52. I think it's in that era where Superman had lost a bunch of his powers. He was just wearing the T-shirt, and he helps a bunch of refugees and stuff like that. But it's like 2 issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a cool story. It's really good. But like, that's where it always, like, the unfortunate thing is because there's always a bigger villain or something, they're either just the plot device, which is like, all these refugees, what are we going to do? It's like, I know what we're going to do. We're going to take out the person that's making them refugees. And you go like, yeah, that's justice. And then no one really turns around and goes like, and now, like there's very little kind of reflection, at least not on a really deep level.
That this idea for what if heroes needed therapy?
Or you, totally.
Yeah.
Or you do this thing where it's like, we've written this cool story and we've introduced a very specific refugee character and we're going to learn the refugee experience. And you go like, are they going to stay human? They go like, until they find something that unlocks their powers.
Yeah.
And you go like, okay, well, fucking, that was just another origin.
Yeah.
So it's not that there aren't refugee stories or human refugee stories. There's lots of countries in DC, made up countries and stuff, that have had these histories of war or displacement or things like that. Think of a country like Bialya, Karak, Markovia, Vladova. There's tons. But how well do those stories get treated? It's a real toss-up. I think there's lots of reference to and allegory, like is mentioned in this question, the refugee experience. And again, like I said, if you just looked at how many times do they mention refugees or how many times does a refugee appear in DC Comics, it'll be like thousands.
Yeah.
But it's more about the like, is it a ongoing thing that we're gonna help these refugees? There's very few arcs that do that. In modern ones, Adventures of Superman, John Kent specifically was about John wanting to be a more proactive Superman, seeing people fleeing the country of Gomorrah and going in and kind of intervening in a way that his dad would not have.
Sure, yeah.
That story is way more specifically about that. And even that story barely focuses on the refugees.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at it, you go, and that's not a knock on the story. Like, I think it's a good story, but it's ultimately, none of these are like, you're not buying like refugee number one and following them. You're buying Superman. So even when the story bends that way, we just follow Superman when he flies away too. So you kind of end up losing the focus a little bit.
You know what is kind of like a refugee story?
No,
I'm not doing something bad. I mean, it's not good, but it's not bad. For Tomorrow.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
For Tomorrow, 100%. Is a story like that. Yeah. And we've read that. We saw how that went.
Yeah.
Sub Diego, we've talked about it's not that they don't exist, but it's like, what's the focus of them? And very few of them are really about the people. Sub Diego is actually probably one of the better ones.
Yeah.
Like on an individual level, there's characters like Jackson Hyde, the new Aquaman. His mom is a Zebelian refugee.
Yep.
Who lived on land. There's lots of refugee characters. There's one called Sinbad who was from Karak, and he I think he got his powers from in Invasion when the gene bomb went off, and he had like kind of mild powers, and then he got a belt that amplified them. And in that story,
I know what I would put that belt.
Jesus. Yeah, I hear this belt amplifies the experience.
Yeah. Until you lose consciousness.
More like sin good. No, he would put this belt on, it would amplify. He had kind of like some like telekinetic kind of powers.
Sure.
But Lex goes on a full like racist offensive against him because I think the belt is like Lex Corp Tech or something.
Sure, yeah.
And in that story, which is in Superman or Action Comics or something like that, it actually does become a little bit more about the refugee experience and facing racism and things like that. It's a little bit more direct. That's kind of an interesting one.
Even Lex was a refugee at one point.
Well, what do you mean on Lexor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean slightly.
Yeah.
He's in exile. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
It counts.
The villains all got sent to that Salvation Run planet.
Sure, yeah. Anytime someone goes to the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, I mean, that's just prison.
I mean, it's kind of a refugee.
No, that's not really what that means. You think like just going to jail makes you a refugee?
I'm a displaced person in jail.
I mean, strictly speaking, yes, but not like this.
All right, let's move
But yeah,
on.
the short version of this is like even is it Christopher Priest's short run on Justice League? I think dealt with a little bit of like the sovereign borders of this African country.
Sure.
And some kind of refugee stuff. There, Black Adam has sheltered metahuman refugees in Kahndaq. Like, there's stories a lot that deal with these things, but again, you'll find them out there. But it's not as easy as saying like, how many stories are there where like a comet is coming? I could go like, oh, there's like these 4. You know what I mean? The refugee question is a lot harder because I think when it's done properly, it's done really subtly or really well, and you kind of forget about it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next question from the Moral Compass of the Dockscourt, who asks, do you think that Earth should be accommodating to alien refugees like Superman, even to humanity's own detriment? After all, the Earth is overpopulated with diminishing resources. It can't bear the hordes of aliens that would follow.
Yeah, I mean, saying a lot of things as if they're fact, but that's all pretty speculative.
I mean, the Earth is overpopulated and diminishing resources.
I'm not 100%. I mean, maybe mathematically, you go like, there is X
not per
amount
capita,
of food.
yes.
I don't think that's true. And I think it's an excuse used by people that don't want to make harder choices.
I think it's resources wise. There's a thing that I saw yesterday that was basically by 2050, it'll take 3 planets to be able to provide enough like agricultural resources for the current usage.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. But again, this is about choices and current usage. Like, look at all the food waste stats.
No, for
from
sure.
the Western.
Yeah.
You know, like this is what I'm saying. You go, like, oh, we can't. Let's make it smaller than Earth. Let's make it a country. Go. We couldn't possibly let these refugees in. We don't have enough here. It's like, actually, we do. We're just really bad at distributing it.
Sure.
We're really, really bad at making sure people have what they need, as opposed to what a few people want. And we're all guilty of that. Like, I like my creature comforts. I'm part of that too. But like, that's not the same as saying we couldn't possibly.
Sure.
So my answer in real life and in comics is always and unequivocally, yes, of fucking course you take them in. People need help, you take them in. If that means you have to adjust how you live so that everyone can live at a standard, then you do that. That's the only answer where you're not a monster. There's no version of this where like people need help, you help them. That's it. End of story. And especially in a comic, in a fictional world where it's like they got powers, they got stuff.
Sure.
Like that. Like, yes, take them in.
Sure.
Because we know what happens when you don't. They just become evil bad guys.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
So you shouldn't even do it like under the threat of that. But like if we're in this fictional world, like at the very least do it for that.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, no, always. If people need help, you give them help. End of story.
It was funny. I watched this Netflix miniseries. That's where that stat came from. But it's this documentary about. It's the framework of it is it's a 3-episode miniseries that basically is the idea that where they take sets of twins, nice, and they put each of them on one on an omnivore diet and one on a vegetarian or a vegan diet.
Okay.
And then they basically do a bunch of other stuff where they also make sure that they're both like working out a little bit and doing a bunch of other stuff. But then also like for it's for 8 weeks, and for the first like half of it they basically make them pre-made food, and then the other half of it they give them like recipes and stuff, but they have to make their own food and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's basically like what happens, and it's not. They're really really good about like being like it's not about calories. It's about like bad fat in the places that will hurt you in your body, and like it's the best approach to all of this. But in between sort of like showing you the progress and how the twins and stuff have to deal with it, they also like are like a mini agricultural documentary about like North American agriculture,
Right.
And it like
it's messed up.
I haven't eaten meat in 3 days. I was just like it fucked me up so much. And they were basically like, if we can just get people to stop eating beef, he's like, all the environmental issues are gone.
I know. But I think about this sometimes too. You know, like where we live, there's a push for food sovereignty. Yeah, because we're obviously very remote. We bring in a lot.
Totally.
You know, we're really transport dependent, and there's a growing movement of sort of
Totally.
more local agriculture and finding ways to get more out of a limited growing season and stuff like that up here. But it's like, think of how hard it was to just tell people, like, if you're sick, stay home. And they're just like, no, I'll do what I want. And now you got to tell people, it's like, you can't have strawberries in January.
I know.
Like, imagine if we just did, and that's like, I consider that like a basic level thing. If it's not in season, don't have it.
Yeah.
Good luck. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Good luck convincing people to do that. You'd never do it. It wouldn't work, you know, like, and that's the more disheartening thing. But I don't think that's a reason to not help people.
Sure. Yeah. No,
you know what I mean? Like, even if no one wants to change, if people want to still consume the same amount or whatever, it's like, if you still want to do all of that and you want to be, you know, whatever, that's fine. But you don't also get to turn people away who need it.
Sure. That's fair. Do you want them to die?
Well, this is totally this conversation, right? You know, like, do they deserve to die? I don't think we said this on mic, but
no, we didn't.
You know, if you're talking about like unhoused people or something like that, let's imagine every conservative talking point is true. They're lazy. They don't want to work. They blah, 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 blah. You go, okay, is the punishment for laziness death? And if the answer is no, you have to provide them with food, housing, medical.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that for that level, then how come the rest of us have to fight for scraps too? We should all be held up to a better level. You know, like it's so simple. And you basically have to be like, stupid, lazy, or evil to think anything otherwise, really.
Next question. Shambling mounds of flour.
Love it. Parliament of Flowers.
Ooh. I just read the first issue of the new Power Girl book. It's funny that it's all Kryptonian questions.
Well, but again, I think that is like the most kind of like forward present quote refugee story. And truly, in Superman comics, he says it a lot.
Sure.
You know?
And it's
usually to fucking ignorant white people. He's like, I'm a refugee. And they go, but you couldn't possibly, you know, like,
yes.
Like it's always him being like, they could look like us too. Like, and he's been doing it for 85 years and people are like, I don't get it. Like,
sure.
It's really disheartening.
And it said that she was from a different Krypton. Of the current super family, where is everyone from?
Sure. So Superman and Supergirl are from Krypton.
Earth 1 Krypton.
Well, Earth 0.
Sure.
Prime Earth. Earth 1 is different.
Sure. Fucking sure.
I
haven't learned that much.
You've sort of undone all from earlier in the episode.
Yeah. Classic gatekeeping.
Yeah. You know, let me handle this one. So they're from Krypton. Power Girl is from the Krypton of Earth 2, a parallel universe. John Kent, Superman, John, and Lois are now part of the Prime timeline, and their history has been retconned to be part of the Prime timeline. But initially, they were refugees from the pre-Flashpoint timeline. Their city was captured and put in a dome on Telos during Convergence, the event we don't speak of, and then they were merged back into the timeline, along with the New 52 Superman and Lois, who also existed. They both died, and then the Superman, Lois, and John from pre-Flashpoint became the ones of this universe. Jesus. And for a while, people knew that, and then their history got changed, so they were one thing.
Wow.
So technically, Superman and John are now from Prime Earth, but they weren't always.
Jesus.
They were from like a hyper time variant of Prime Earth, basically. There's what's his name? Otho Ra and Ossel Ra are two Felosian refugees. So the Felosians were like a kind of splinter group of Kryptonians that managed to survive the destruction of Krypton, and they were held prisoner on Warworld. And when Superman went to Warworld from that big kind of long epic, and he took down Mongol and everything like that, he brought the Warworld refugees to Earth, and Otho-Ra and Osul-Ra, these two Felosian kids, he adopted them. So they're
okay.
two younger siblings now for John. So that's where they're from. The new Superman is from China, but main China.
Super Chinaman?
No. No. Connor is still he was a clone. That's still that. Am I missing anyone? Am I missing anyone really big? Pretty much everyone else is from the Prime Earth. Like anyone else, they're like Steel or stuff like that. They're all from Prime Earth.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Good Lord.
There you go.
All right. Last question from Butt Fart Butt. Sorry, only just Butt Fart Butt. Who asks, do you think Otho-Ra's story will have a happy ending?
Yeah. So Otho-Ra and Osul-Ra, these two Felosian kids from Warworld, like they grew up there. They only knew being slaves on Warworld.
Yeah, that won't have any detrimental effects on their mental health.
Well, totally. And, it's, I would say, all things considered, they're actually handling transitioning to life on Earth very well. But they also have John, Connor, Lois, Kara, Clark, all of them, They've got a big support network. They've even got fucking Bibbo Bibowski taking them out for ice cream and shit like that. Like, there's a lot of people there, a lot of support for them. I always get confused with their names, like which one is which.
Sure.
One of them actually.
Yeah, you know them. They all look, for those Felosians all look the same.
Yeah, I just completely forget what I said 2 questions ago.
I don't even think they should be on Earth.
You know what? They could stay on Warworld. Yeah. Could you imagine? Jesus. I can't remember which one, but one of them, because they're like twins or whatever, one of them died, but was resurrected with Genesis energy. Like, as in, like,
I can feel it coming.
That's, by the way, worst era of Genesis is Phil Collins' Genesis.
Really?
Yeah, because it's all just like, I mean, In the Air Tonight's a good song, but otherwise it's basically just like, it's all pretty much like rote pop music.
It's Phil Collins.
Peter Gabriel Genesis.
Oh, I forgot you're a big Peter Gabriel.
Is fucking fan. Where it's at. Anyway, Genesis energy is from the first world, like the old gods, Ugrund. And it was powering Warworld and all this kind of stuff. And that brought one of them back. But people want that Genesis energy. There's been a lot of struggles for it. Even on Earth, there was a Genesis energy shard that like Atlantis was ready to go to war over. And like, there's going to be problems. Do I think that they're going to have a happy ending? I think they have to. I think it's going to be really unsatisfying if Superman rescues them from Warworld, saves them from death, raises them to be good kids, gives them new life, and then they fucking die or something. Or they get, shipped off to space. I mean, they might go off to space again on their own, but I would hope it would be on their own, not that they become part of another Warworld. Or like, it would be so unsatisfying if that happens.
Or if they take a villain turn.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they could, but that seems kind of. If I don't like that as much, because I like this thing of like they grew. It's not even that they're bad, but they grew up in a might makes right kind of society.
Sure,
right? Where it's like strength. If someone hits you, you hit them until they can't get up. Right?
It's like a Miracle
Superman has to be like
Man kind of situation.
No, like
Mr. Miracle situation, or.
Well, sort of, just because it's like Warworld, right? It's all gladiatorial combat, and it's about like adding like links to their chain and things like that, like all this kind of horrible kind of propaganda sort of thing. It basically, like, they're not as morose. They're very like fun kids, but in having to teach them how to be like chill.
Yeah,
Superman has his own version of Damian.
I was going to say, I'm like, have they met Damian yet?
It's not totally the same because, again, like, they're fun. They want to be kids.
Sure. But that feels like it would be fun.
But they just don't understand.
Yeah.
And in that way, Superman has a Damian situation where Batman has to be like, I know you were taught one thing, but that's like not how the world works.
Yeah.
Certainly not how it should work, but it's also not how it does work either.
Yeah.
And Superman has a little bit of that with them. And I think it would be so dissatisfying to go through all that and see all that progress and then just kind of like,
sure.
They're bad now, or they're back to being a war world, or
yeah.
I think so. I think it kind of has to end happy, even if it means that it has to end
in like an unsatisfying way.
Well, or I just mean like we're off to space. You may never see us again.
Sure.
If we just go like, but we know they're out there.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice.
Poochie in space.
Well, yeah, maybe not quite Poochie style, but that's my feeling about it anyway. But yeah.
Well, that was the last question. If you want to send in a question for next week's episode.
Next week, we're talking about the Arrow family.
Hey!
Baby. The Archer's Emerald.
Cool.
Send your questions about Green Arrow and fam.
It's always episodes like this where I'm like, we really haven't done an episode about this character?
I mean, we've done like 3 episodes about Green Arrow.
Oh, okay.
In 400.
Sure.
And so on. So,
sure.
And I want to talk about it.
All
and it's my show. Yeah. And my award.
Oh, no. Now tell me what you think about refugees.
Do you know what? I don't want to share my award.
Yeah, or my country.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Outstanding alt-right podcast goes to...
I bet there's an award. Also, you can send in those questions through our various social media platforms.
That's right. We're Dr. DC Podcast on all of the platforms.
drdcpodcast.com or .ca. Give us a 5-star review and we will read it on a future episode. Also, if you want even more content jammed into your fucking ear holes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Fucking subscribe to our Patreon.
Patreon.com/DrDC. There's a $1, $5, $7 level. They all give you access to the Docscord, our amazing Discord fan community. At the higher levels, you get bonus episodes. It's Personal Confessions January on the double.
Of course.
Of course, everyone's favorite. And at the Golden Age tier, you get access to Toretto Talks, to Bonding Time.
Oh, yeah. Toretto Talks. That's great.
Toretto Talks, totally unproblematic thing to have up there now. I talk about how much I love Vin so much.
I know.
It's a real problem now. But Bonding Time, we're almost done rewatching all of James Bond, all of the Eon Productions official James Bond movies.
I think
no,
Vin Diesel is great.
No. He helped me soup up my... God.
I can fuck with nitros. All right. Also, if you want even more content that's related, subscribe to our other podcast.
Ghostfacers, a Supernatural rewatch. We're going through every single episode of the CW Supernatural. We talk about real world monster lore, behind the scenes stuff about the show. We are most of the way through season 8 of 15 right now. But yeah, head on over there. Check it out.
That is it for this week.
Adios.
Ciao, ciao.
Superheroes, they always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure, they are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.